Well, thanks everybody for joining me here tonight. I'm excited to share with you some investment ideas. This group is mainly geared towards beginning real estate investors. I know when I got started, I didn't really have any idea of all the possibilities that are out there, and we're going to share some of them tonight. So let me just share the screen and we'll get started. All right, George, you should see the screen now.
Yes, it's on.
Okay. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Matthew. I've been a professional accountant for more than 30 years now. I offer services in terms of entity structuring, so setting up your corporations both in Canada and the US, operational and tax consulting, tax return preparation. I'm also the CFO for a home builder, and I own a condo locally, and I'm looking for a property in the US, specifically a small apartment building in Texas, initially in the Houston area. So I'm coming at real estate from a whole bunch of different directions. So what we're going to learn tonight is a number of different ways you can invest in real estate, starting with the BRRRR method, private equity, tiny homes, and other small footprint structures. You may have seen a TV show, I think, with that exact name, Tiny Homes, wholesaling, and short-term rentals. I'm particularly looking forward to that last item because we have a special guest speaker coming on to discuss her experience with theme rentals in particular. Now, to keep the lawyers happy, this disclaimer essentially says that none of the information here is intended to be tax, accounting, or legal advice. I'm not soliciting any offer to buy or sell any security, product, or instrument, and information is subject to change. I've done my best to keep it up to date, but new legislation could come out tomorrow. A new court case could be decided tomorrow. We'll have a Q&A period at the end of the presentation. In the meantime, please feel free to put your questions in the chat so you don't forget them, and we'll go through them at the end.
Sorry, Michael, before you start, is the screen able to make it bigger because it's like so small, or is it just myself? Is it like full screen or?
It's full screen on mine, yeah.
Okay, so I'll try and figure it out from my end. Sorry to interruption. Thank you.
It's okay. If you can't see it, it's hard to follow the presentation. For those of you that have some more detailed questions that you'd like answered, perhaps in a one-on-one scenario, there's a 30-minute session that you can book here. George, if you could perhaps put that in the chat for us, people can copy it from there. Appointments are available tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 11:30 on the hour and half hour, and also Monday from 10 to noon. Now that works, then my email address, it's actually on every slide. So if you don't get it here, you just get it later. You can reach out to me and we'll set up a mutually convenient time. So to start off, our first type of investment is the BRRRR strategy. BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat, hence BRRRR. Rehab, also known as repair, and refinance we'll cover in more detail later, but it's just essentially increasing the value so you can increase the amount you can borrow. So starting off with buy, that's pretty straightforward. You're acquiring the property. I'll just mention here, it's important if you're going into business with someone else, especially if it's family or friends, get things in writing. It'll make your life easier, trust me. The next one is rehab. Fix and upgrade. So a fix would be something like repainting a wall that had some chipped paint or worn off paint, but you can also upgrade. Personally, I did some upgrades on my my own condo, and George was there for a lot of it, weren't you, George? So I ripped out carpets, replaced them with laminate flooring, painted the whole condo from floorboards up to and including the ceiling, put in several new appliances, replaced a door. And because of all that money being spent, I was able to increase my rent by a full 25%. Now, it's important, however, when you're doing the upgrades to bear in mind the neighborhood standards. By that, I mean, if no one in your neighborhood has granite countertops, it's kind of a waste of money to put them in because you won't get the value for them. People aren't looking for that feature in that neighborhood, and they certainly won't pay you for it. I mean, they won't pay you less maybe, but they're not going to pay you more. So you'll never make your money back on something that's too far out of character. Certainly you can upgrade it a little bit, 10%, 20% better, because that allows you to justify a premium rent, but you can't go too far beyond the standard of your neighborhood. So rent, I think pretty much everyone understands what that is. You're signing a standard long-term tenancy. In Ontario, there's now a standard Ontario lease that applies to most. It's 14 pages long. However, what many people don't realize is you can attach additional terms. So here's just the beginning page of the standard form of lease. You see up here, it actually says standard form of lease. And clause 15, here's where you're able to add a check mark to indicate you're adding additional terms. And so you can agree to anything that you and your tenant say you agree to, provided it doesn't actually contravene a term of the act. But any extra rules you want to add in that's not in the regular agreement, then you can add it there. So now we come to refinance, and this is the key part of the whole process. Essentially what you're doing is you're replacing your old loan with a new loan, but because you've increased the value by doing those fixes and upgrades, you're actually able to get a valuation at a higher price and therefore get additional funds in the process. Obviously, this will mean you need a new appraisal. And when you get a new appraisal, it's a good idea to set what's called an anchor point. Now, what an anchor point will do is it allows you to set a value in the mind of your appraiser. How do you do that? Well, you do your own market research to come up with your comparatives for the neighborhood. And let's say your property was initially worth 500,000. You did some work on it, and now it's worth, according to your research, 600 to 700,000. By presenting that information to the appraiser, they're going to have a hard time justifying coming in anywhere below 600,000. So that's sort of now the bottom line. If they don't agree to accept this information from you, if they don't agree to take it into consideration, feel free to fire them, because you're paying for them. Even if it's the bank's appraiser, you're paying for them. So you just call the bank up, say, this person's being unreasonable, I need someone else. And they'll always have 2 or 3 people that they work with, or companies. So here's just some numbers to show what I was talking about. You have the initial purchase price of $500,000. Typical down payment is 20%, which means you get a mortgage for the remaining 80, 400,000. After repair value, assuming 40,000 of repairs and upgrades, it's now worth 600,000. At that same 80%, you're able to get 480,000. So what does this mean? Well, you put in 40,000 of repairs and upgrades, you got 80,000 more. So you doubled your money. Your return is even better if you supply the labor, right? Maybe it's only 20,000 out of pocket for materials, and therefore you have 60,000 more to work with. Now, these prices are just representative. Of course, it's actually even low for a Toronto-based home, but the principle works the same regardless. And then the last R of our BRRRR is just repeat, do it again. Types of properties this works for, well, pretty much any kind of property you can think of in terms of how it's being used. So it could be a commercial property, a multifamily property, a rent to own property, standard tenant that most of us are used to, student housing. So that BRRRR strategy can work with all of these. Now, some of the pros of this: significant wealth increase is earned over time. It's one of the few assets that appreciates. Most people have heard that as soon as you start a car, if you can buy a new car these days, as soon as you start a new car on the lot to drive it off and take it home, you've lost 20% of your value. That's because almost every car just loses its value. A well-maintained building is one of the very few assets that has its price increase over time. And that's what this strategy is playing into. Banks understand this. You don't have to explain what this asset is, how to value it. It's well understood. When you come to them with a refinance, it's as if you came to them with a new home that has those features already baked in. There's no different on the process of evaluation from their perspective. So it's easily understood. Of course, there's also some cons. It requires substantial funds, at least for the first purchase and renovations, because you need to acquire the first property. So what's the solution to that? You can always partner with someone who can help you with the funds required. So as an example, maybe you want to buy a house, it's going to cost 40,000 to fix it up, but that's literally all the money you have. You have no money for the down payment and you can't carry the mortgage because of your income situation. So what you would do is find a partner who does have the ability to put down the 20% down payment, take on the mortgage, and you then fund the renovations, and you draw up an agreement to split the profits that come out of this property. So our next investment option is something called private equity. This is an entirely different type of asset in that it's an alternative form of financing in which you're investing directly in the company. You're not, however, investing in the real estate that the company buys. It allows you to pool funds. Prior to the introduction of private equity to the masses, if you wanted to get involved in one of these opportunities, you'd have to fund the whole thing. So if it was going to cost $500,000 to buy the property, you'd have to come up with the whole $500,000. There's no ability to share that. But now you're able to pool your funds with the funds of other people. And by doing so, you're able to invest in opportunities you couldn't do otherwise. And this is fairly new. It's only been available in Ontario since 2016. So I'll give you some examples here. One of the first ones is self-storage. There's a company that wanted to build a self-storage in Vancouver, and what they wanted to get is money to help them with the payment of the salespeople, to fund the sales center, marketing costs, all that sort of thing. And you're able to invest in that. Another example is an apartment renovator that operates out of the Hamilton area. What they do is they have a specific way of looking for homes because they're targeting 30 to 60-year-old apartment buildings that have never been renovated. Their target market is young couples that will be starting a family in the next 2 to 3 years. They really dug into their market and they do what I call smart upgrades, which means they'll go in and upgrade any empty unit, but only with what they know people actually want to pay for. Because they're going to be starting a family typically in a few years, they know that when those people leave, say 3 years later, they can refresh the unit again. And when they first take over an apartment building and do their renovations, they're able to increase the rent by 50%, which is quite a substantial increase, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So this is just two different ways of getting involved in private equity. To give you some example of how the income flows work for this, this is a typical payment structure for a 3-year project. Year 1, 8% target interest. Year 2, year 3. Typically, it's paid out quarterly, so it'd be 2%, 2%, 2%, 2% every 3 months. At the end, there's this kicker, and the kicker is what they call a profit share that you as the investor are able to get at the end of the project. Now, all these are targets because there's no guarantee. But if you see, if they make their targets over 3 years, you earn a total of 36%, which means your average per year is 12%. Now, I just mentioned it's not guaranteed. Beware of guarantees, because if anyone in real estate offers you a guarantee, that's a pretty good sign that there's something you should avoid. It could very well be some sort of scam. Guaranteed returns are investments outside of insurance contracts, perhaps they just don't exist. So pros for private equity, it's very indirect investment. You're able to get involved at the most minimal way possible. It's truly passive. Essentially, you cut a check to start the process and the company cuts checks back to you. That's about it. If there's any headaches, the company deals with them. What's also very important to understand is you can often invest from your registered funds. So some of the common funds we're talking about here are registered retirement savings plans, registered education savings plans, registered retirement income funds, and the RIF is what most people convert their RSP to when they turn 72 to take out money over time. Tax-free savings account, locked in retirement account. So all of those are often available for you to invest into these private equity deals. So many people say, gee, it sounds great. I'd love to get involved in one of those private equity deals. I just don't have the cash. Well, do you have anything in your RSP? Yeah, I got about 200,000. They're well positioned to take advantage of any of the opportunities in this space because in my experience, as much as 80% of the deals out there can be invested in from registered funds. And of course, cash you can invest in all 100% of the deals. Typical investments start at 25,000, but the home builder I mentioned was starting with as little as 5,000. Now there are some cons. One is your funds are locked in. What does that mean? It means that typically for the length of the project, which could be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, you can't take the funds out. Or if you can take the funds out, there's a penalty for doing so. And frankly, the opportunities are limited. There aren't thousands of good deals out there, but there are more than enough that you could find 1 or 2 that are of interest. The private equity dealer that I'm familiar with, they typically have anywhere from 15 to 20 investments on the go at any time, which they've heavily vetted to make sure they're only offering the best ones to their clients. And by the way, if that's something of interest to you, you can email me and I can refer you to the representative to get more information. Basically, he just explain what opportunities are available and see if it's a fit for you. So our next investment option is the tiny homes, another what I'm calling small footprint structures. It's a creative way to use space that otherwise is vacant and not earning money. And it certainly helps you to increase your return if you are renting out a place that has unutilized space. So some examples, obviously the tiny home is one of the best known examples. This one, believe it or not, is only 383 square feet. The architecture on these modern tiny homes is very impressive. They really understand how to use the small space in a way that takes full advantage of every square inch. And they're able to put way more in there than you thought might be possible. But it's not just tiny homes that I'm referring to. There's also glamping. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it refers to glamorous camping. As you can see here, people have basically taken the indoors and put it outdoors. I'm not sure how that's still camping, but it is certainly very popular with some people. It's extremely high-end camping, and it's a way to generate income on your rental property. Now, backyard sheds, this one, to give you some idea, is about 8 feet by 16 feet. They last as at least for 40 years if you're buying the right kind of shed. And this could be a multi-purpose structure in that it can be used for self-storage. You can put 2 pretty big size lockers in something like that. It could be a home office. It could be a yoga studio. It could be a workshop. Also, coach house is another emerging trend. And to give you an idea what that looks like, you have the main house here in the illustration on the left, coach house in the back, and then they've reversed the perspective in the other picture. There are limitations on how big this coach house, the old name for it is granny flat, which I guess is no longer politically correct. But it does give you a way to use that space. You must know your bylaws. This is just one bylaw I happen to know, which is the one for Ottawa. It limits the size of that based on 3 parameters. One is the absolute square footage, 40% of the space of your backyard, or 40% of the area of your house. So whichever is the smallest of those 3, that's how big yours can be. There's also a micro suite, which is a way of building a suite within a suite. If you can see the yellow area here, it's the micro suite. And the whole thing is designed as a coach house or backyard house. This right here is a door to the outside. So this could be, there's a bathroom, a bedroom. This is a door to the other part of the unit, which could be locked, and therefore this is completely self-contained, rented to a third party, or it could be used as an office, could be someone who has an elderly parent that wants to be independent and yet have the support of having someone close by. This is actually just the top floor. A lot of these units are designed to have a basement as well. Again, this is not a big place. If you can imagine, this whole thing is, less than 900 square feet. This is about 300 square feet or less in here. But what this does is allows people who perhaps couldn't afford a place on their own to sublet this area and generate some income, and therefore it lets them stay in a place they couldn't otherwise afford. Okay. Some people want a home office, but they don't have the room in their actual house. So here is exactly that, an office in the backyard. So some of the pros involved with these small footprint structures, very minimal cost outlays are required to get started. Could be as low as a few thousand for one of the sheds, as much as 40 to 80,000 for a tiny home, depending on the features that you're looking for. Some of the bigger ones, for instance, have a loft upstairs where the bed goes. This does also give you a competitive advantage in a rental market. By that, I mean, if you're the only one in the neighborhood that has the ability for someone to have an external home office, to have a workshop where they could rent the main house and the workshop at the same time, the same property, it makes it very convenient for them. So many people now have some sort of side hustle that giving them the ability to work and live at the same address is very appealing to many people these days. There are, of course, some cons with this type of structure. Small structure means small incomes. You aren't going to be able to double your rent on the house, for instance, by having a backyard coach house. However, it does make a huge difference for people that are looking to increase the return on the main house, and this is a way to do so. Not knowing the bylaws can be very costly, as we're about to see. This is a $3 million mistake. This home was built in Gatineau, Quebec, just across the river from Ottawa. It cost $3 million. And because the owner did not understand the bylaws properly, he did not get a lawyer to look into them and certify his plans were appropriate. It's actually built too close to the road. And so the city took him to court and he's been ordered to demolish the whole thing. Of course, they're fighting over who has to pay for it. He says the city. I'm not sure that's been settled yet, but in any event, the house has to go. Next investment option is wholesaling. You put a property under contract, which means you have a piece of paper saying you have the right to buy the property in 30 to 90 days. That gives you 30 to 90 days to market the property to find someone else to purchase it for a higher price. You need to understand the market value, and you're able to earn an assignment fee. You do that by charging the new buyer this fee as your reward for finding them a property at the lower price that you found it at. So some of the pros with this one, it's one of the easiest ways to get started because virtually no money is required. Very, very little. You're placing homes under contract, which you will not close. Someone else will close on the home. And the way that works is when you do put in your offer, whether you're doing it through your own name or perhaps you have a corporation, you add to the buyer line something along the lines of Michael Matthew or nominee, or Michael Matthew or assignee. And that gives you the legal ability to pass that contract on to someone else. Now, you have to make sure that in your agreement, which the seller is almost always providing, that there's nothing in there that says you can't assign. Many contracts will allow you to assign, but they will charge you a fee. So you need to factor that into your pricing model to make sure whatever the fee is, you're able to account for that and still get a good return on your money. Good way to get started in real estate, especially if you're a beginner. very little downside risk. Typical return is perhaps $5,000 to $15,000 on an assignment fee. Could be more if it's a larger property, perhaps a small apartment building. Now, there are cons. In order to get paid constantly, you have to do constant work because you're continually putting properties under contract, marketing those properties, agreeing with the new buyer on the assignment fee, and doing the process all over again. You need to understand the market value because typically these people are coming in and they're doing some sort of upgrades on the property to rent it out and follow, the BRRRR strategy that we talked about to start. They just don't want to be responsible for finding the properties all the time. So some contractors love this model because they love supplying their own labor, fixing a place up, but they hate having to look for the place to fix up. So a wholesaler can work with a flipper and have a very good symbiotic relationship because the wholesaler has a ready buyer and the fix and flipper doesn't have to go looking for properties. So it works out well for both. But in order to do that, you have to know what's a good deal to give the flipper room to do their touch-ups on the place and then either flip it or even rent it out. Now, there also, you could run into some deposit limitations, meaning sooner or later, even if you're putting down very minimal deposits to lock up the property for those 30 to 90 days, at a certain point, you won't be able to keep putting deposits down. Now, that said, deposits can be very, very minimal. And as long as you're finding buyers quickly, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. Now we're getting to investment option number 5, which is the short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are something that gives people more choice when it comes to choosing where to stay, particularly on a vacation, and often at a much more affordable price. Two of the best known such services are VRBO. I know I have seen a lot of ads for those properties on TV lately, and that stands for Vacation Rentals by Owner. And of course, Airbnb is also very well known. I've used Airbnb many times myself. Now, theme rentals are the newest trend. We have a special guest speaker coming in to address that. And her name is Diana Atlas. Diana is an avid real estate investor, always looking to grow, learn, and share new strategies. Her latest project was purchasing and theming a large short-term rental in Orlando, Florida. So Diana, I believe I saw you online. So if you could unmute and we could have a discussion about your experiences with your Orlando property. You should be able to share your screen if you have some photographs. So my first question, Diana, first of all, thank you for joining us.
Great. Hi, Michael. Thank you for asking me. Hi, everybody.
If someone wanted to embark on this type of investment, what would you say is the best way to get started? Now, before you address that, I just want everyone to know that Diana just got going with this herself. So she's very, very new, but I thought that would be very useful for you because she's not that far ahead of you, but far enough that she has some valuable insights, I'm sure. So again, what would you say is a best way to start?
That's like the toughest question on here because what I would say is start with someone someone that, you know, with boots on the ground in the area where you're looking. And, someone referred, and I kind of went through that, and it was a really rocky road. So the person that I hired was a real estate agent, and he also had the idea of introducing to our investment group the values of theming the short-term rental, especially, right in Orlando, right by Disney World. And so I went through the whole process with him. He also did the theming part for us. And then he has a property manager that he works in connection with. So I am now done with the purchase part. I'm done with the theming and bringing the house, it needed slight renovation, nothing large. And
Excuse me,
now
Trina,
I'm
are
booked.
you able to show us some pictures? I think that would be very helpful for people. to see.
Absolutely. Yes, I will. So, but before I say that, I just want to say, so if you wanted to embark, the very, very first step I think you should do is just research as if you yourself wanted to rent an Airbnb. Everybody calls them Airbnb like we call Two Shoes Kleenex, but really it's a short-term rental. I would start there. Go to Airbnb and put in you don't even have to put in dates. I'll show you what that is like. And just research. And that's what I did. And now I know I would do even more. Okay, so sharing
Okay, while you're
screen.
doing that, some people may be thinking, well, that sounds great, but I don't own any property. How can I do this? Any sort of Airbnb. Well, you can find people who have spare rooms that are available, and you can offer to do a joint venture with them so that you would do all the advertising, you would look after all the management of the property. People would stay at their home, and then you would split the income. So what that means is you could actually have multiple Airbnb locations without owning 1 inch of real estate. So Diana, while you're getting the pictures organized, just wondering if there's any mistakes you've made that you could share with the other people on the call so they can avoid them, frankly, or perhaps others that you've come across from talking to other investors.
Can you see my screen?
We can,
You could see the house now?
yes. Yeah,
Okay, perfect.
we see the main screen with the 7 photographs.
Great. Any mistakes? I'd say the biggest thing you want to do is have a very detailed, clearly defined contract. It is hard when you're a newbie because you don't know what you don't know. But we definitely didn't even scratch the surface of having the kind of detailed, highly defined. We didn't have much of a contract to speak of. So that's just the number one. Make sure you could speak with, with myself. You could speak with anybody who knows kind of what they're doing, and make a list of sort of things that you want defined. And hopefully they will also say, all the things that they're defining. I'm doing this. This is up to you. That kind of thing. So this is our beautiful, finely finished, magical underwater escape villa in Davenport, Florida, which is just 20 minutes outside of Disney World, most of Disney World. And that is because you can't be right in the Disney area. I think that's Orange County. You can't be right in there. So this is very close, and it's in a resort. So what that means, I'll show you pictures. So what we did, the plan is that you buy a large home where multi-families could go and stay all at the same time, not with different families, but like you're multi-generational, I should say, if you want to go with your siblings, your parents, the grandparents, all of that. So it's a 9-bedroom house. These are some of the, I'll go back to the themed rooms. This is the house. And it's in a resort. So this is a gated resort community that has a clubhouse and some really beautiful features, which you'll see in the pictures too. That's the front, that's the living room. These things come completely furnished for the most part. Although if you buy brand new, if you're buying brand new, then you don't have that furniture. I don't think right now. So the way these were sold was furnished. Everything in this part of the resort is a short-term rental. So your neighbor also is a short-term rental. There's another section of this development, Champions Gate, that is for permanent residents. So as you can see, it's a big, spacious downstairs bedroom, and downstairs area with
Very bright.
two downstairs bedrooms. This is the master suite downstairs. And these are not themed. You just need to theme 2 or 3 of the rooms. You could theme a lot more, but you get the bang for the buck with that. This is the other downstairs bedroom with a bathroom that is shared with your guest. Then you go upstairs and you get to this beautiful underwater cavern. So these are completely custom built. So sometimes you'll see the term themed home, but they're not. It's like they have cute pictures on the wall or some stickers and cute comforters, maybe some lighting, but these are custom built beds. So right here, it's my artist did a tunnel down here to the next door bedroom. So you have 4 bunk beds in here. So and the slide, of course. So this is a total adventure for the kids. This is where the tunnel comes into the other room. And this is a pirate ship, underwater pirate room.
Is that a bed as well in the pirate ship?
Yeah. Here you're seeing the pirate ship from the top. So this is a full bed, this is a full bed, and that's a twin. And completely, painted, hand-painted murals. There's so much more I could say about the specifics, what I would do differently or what I wouldn't, but all this was built. These artists were already seen and set artists for Disney and for other real life construction crews. Here upstairs, this is the large bedroom is actually called a media room. And a lot of people have this as the theater, but we had 3 full beds in it already when we bought it. So we kept it that way. So just more and more bedrooms upstairs. And then this is the 3rd themed room, which is the sandcastle. These are 2 little tiny trundle beds. It pulls out more, but they're little beds. And then these are twin size beds up here. We also call it the Moana room.
Yes. There's Moana.
Yeah, just to keep the Disney in there. A great amount of detail that the artist went in. There's 5 bathrooms in the house, super good Wi-Fi. This is the loft upstairs with a TV, and there's also PlayStation kind of games here. So the whole purpose of this is that families, and then we also got the garage themed. Some people do even more in the garage and completely close it off. Because really it's a rental, people don't pull into the garage, and they have an arcade in here. So I got the 3rd bedroom instead, and they made this into a theater. And then over here is a gamer station. So this is really, there would be games up here where the kids could play. And they did some incredible water-like epoxy flooring
It looks like
And
you're
here's
right in
where I
the lake.
mean, what's that?
Looks like you're right in the lake.
Yeah. And here's where, I mean, like this, in other homes, you wouldn't even see this. It would look like a regular bedroom. They would take the tracks off, but it was, you know, an additional expense. And my contractor suggested we do the third bedroom and instead. And then every house has its own private pool. And this is a lanai that's screened for mosquitoes in Florida at night. You want to avoid that. It looks like it's glass or something, but it's just a screen. And so, yeah, it's, you know, if you want to take advantage, instead of staying at a hotel, if you went with, like I mentioned, that kind of a family, your siblings, their kids, your parents, you know, 3 or 4 families could share that 9-bedroom house. And if you paid $600 a night, that would be nothing, because between all those families, and the kids have a place to run around inside the house, you're not in a hotel with them, you know, going into one bedroom and then another bedroom and having nowhere to hang out together. This is that amazing clubhouse. My house happens to be very close walking distance. They have a full bar and restaurant in the resort where I purchased. You'll find different resorts have different amenities, and a full clubhouse. I mean, gym. And then the clubhouse also has its own full arcade. And then out here you have this kid's wonderful splash pad. So this is what I mean by a resort community. There's a lazy river. That's the lobby. They also have their own theater. That's not my house, that's in the clubhouse. And the sand volleyball courts, tennis courts. So
It's very impressive, very impressive.
thank
Now,
you.
what attracted you to the themed rentals in particular, as opposed to just the standard Airbnb style short-term rental?
Sure. That's part of your question here as far as pros and cons. You're at the time that we're getting into the market, there's not quite as much room for high returns as the prices have all gone up. So you really need to get, like I said, the bang for the buck. And what you're looking for is the perfect area that you could research and see. The other really high Airbnb area is Scottsdale, Arizona. So something where people have a lot of reasons to come for many reasons. Well, of course, we have Disney and we have the weather, and it's a very international place, Orlando. The theming, to answer your question, is going to increase the nightly rate that I can charge and the occupancy rate. So this same house, not themed, might make a revenue of like $60,000 per year. That's just revenue, not my profit or anything.
Right.
This themed home is projected to make more like double. The first year, maybe it'll be a little less. The second year, it may be even more. I could be looking at 136,000 next year in revenue. So these homes, they're still in the minority, although it's quite the trend that
Well, that's very interesting. I myself had never even heard of such a thing until very recently. So you've given us a very good taste for that. So
I'll show you here on the map. So like Disney is right up here. And we just take the I-4. And what I put in is July 2nd through 9th, 15 guests.
right.
And you'll see all these things come up. So there's quite a lot of competition. But if you're looking at this, and then this pops up, here's like others, you know, besides my house. These dates, my house is already booked, so you won't see my house. But if you look at something like this pop up, you'd really want to take a look at that. And this is also going for $683 a night. So as opposed to close.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
301 for 366, 367,
Yeah, so,
419,
yeah, so here you have
366.
the same house as mine and it's 366.
Yeah.
Here's another themed house, and this one's another great one, the Polynesian one. So you'll see that, well, there's quite a few themed, but not really, because this is July 4th week and mine is already booked and I'm still brand new.
Right,
Um,
right. You've only been
so-
doing this since what, December?
It's only been live since December.
Right. So you're very, very new and already you've got a booking that far out. That's impressive.
Yeah, and I have some months that are already booked out. Yeah, so it's still not at the top rate like this one that was 683 or something. And mine was like 600 because you'll see this person has 40 reviews. So these kinds of things, I'm still a newbie. I still have to come in and be a little bit more competitive. So the other thing is this takes a lot of cash.
Right.
Because you not only have to purchase a house, now you could do a joint venture. You may enjoy, you may say like with your family or with other friends, let's all do this, and then you'll have a place to go stay for yourselves.
Right.
It may not be the best for your profit. Like at some point, I really had to make that distinction between, am I doing this for us or am I doing it for a profit? Because there's things that you want to start doing to your house that are absolutely not profitable and not necessary. And, I'm not going to be living there. I'm not even going to be staying there that much. So,
Yeah, and that's a very important point with all types of real estate investing. People will take a look at a property, say, well, I wouldn't want to live there. But I have to tell them, well, you're not living there. So it doesn't
your
matter
business.
if you want to live there. The question is there a market for that type of property? That's all. And as you
Exactly.
say, with something like this, it can be of tremendous appeal, particularly to someone with young children. I think that's the target market we're talking about here. Probably not something that you're going to be thrilled with looking at a wall full of mermaids and sea turtles.
Well, you'd be
Years on
surprised,
it.
Michael, because there's all kinds of theming, and there's like Harry Potter, and I know 30-year-olds that are still like bouncing off the walls for staying in themed homes. I know a 50-year-old person that, she's like, I want to stay there. They love it.
Oh, for
They
sure.
love Disney.
I
And there's
could,
different ways to theme.
right. You could certainly theme a sports have a sports theme that I think would appeal to a wider age demographic as well. So.
Yeah, and there's Star Wars rooms. There's all kinds of things. One of our other colleagues is doing all the upstairs, and it's a pirate theme. So again, people, there's a lot of adults that and there are adult rooms as well. There's some children rooms, but there's like a captain's quarter that's very beautiful. The more rooms you theme, or if you have a whole house theme, then you could charge a lot more. But again, you're going to have to put in more cash. And
Is
yeah.
that something you're considering perhaps down the road in a year or two, maybe adding themes to additional rooms in this house?
Not really down the road too much in this house. That has not been top of mind. What I'm going to need to do soon is, you see, these are nice upgraded tile flooring. I'm going to need to get rid of the carpet that's
Okay,
getting
so-
a little old, and that's going to cost me a lot of money. This house is big,
It looks,
and
how many square feet is it?
3,900.
Oh, wow. 3,900. That's big.
Yeah, so I mean, luckily the whole downstairs and a lot of it is already tiled, but my next big expense is to get like hard flooring. That'll also be much easier on the maintenance. I won't have to shampoo. So I'll get like a nice hard wood planks.
Okay. Now,
And yeah.
by way of wrapping up, do you have any thoughts as to who this would be appropriate for, or Anything else you'd like to add?
Um, it was quite the large project. I wouldn't recommend it as your first project.
Okay, good to know.
I would say that. Yeah, it was quite the large project, and you need to have reserves for sure. And so, I mean, I'm very excited about it. I hope I don't sound like I'm not, but I'm still like very
Oh,
fresh off
yeah,
the.
you're so new. You're very, very close to having to pay for all this stuff and not, you don't have those years of income in between the payment. So I get that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much, Diana.
Oh, it's
Diana's
my
going to stick
pleasure.
around. And if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat, or you'll have the opportunity to unmute yourself in a moment. And I would just, to address the point that Diana raised, is not something that's appropriate for a first-time investor. You could be a first-time investor, but you'd want to partner with someone who has done it before. And
That's a
that
good
way
idea.
you can benefit from, frankly, their mistakes / a wisdom. But if this is something that you're really interested in, there's a way to do that. So Diana, I'm just going to ask you to stop sharing your screen so I can share
Sure.
mine, please.
Did that work?
I believe so.
Okay.
Now see the summary screen. So by way of quick summary, there's many possible investment options out there. I've given you a taste of them tonight, and frankly, there's more to come. It covers a spectrum in terms of time, efforts, and funds that are required. So you can certainly find an option where it fits the time that you have, the effort you want to expend, and the money you have available. Don't forget about those registered funds. It can be applicable not just for private equity, but also you can do third-party mortgages through that. Important to remember, though, don't try to do everything. Diana and I are in a group where we get to see all kinds of different investment strategies. And I, for one, certainly struggle with shiny object syndrome from time to time, whereby everybody that comes on is super successful. Everything looks so good. Find one or two that really appeal to you and work those until you get them operating well. Then you can just sort of get someone in to manage them and you can move on.
If I could add to that, Michael, really
Sure.
quick. I would not have been able to do this if I had not started with a couple, I mean, maybe I could have, but if I had more money, but I used some of the couple of rental properties that I had bought in Georgia. And I used one of them and refinanced that. I bought that cash.
Right.
And I used some money from there. And so that also helps too.
All right. So again, to say that she's not a first-time investor and had other assets that were available. So that's great. Our next event will be in exactly 4 weeks on the 24th. Again, 7 p.m. start time. And we're going to get into some additional types of real estate investments, including something I just learned about within the last couple of weeks, which is fractional real estate investment. You can get started for as little as $1, which is amazing, and actually own a piece, obviously not a whole property, but own a piece of a property. So we'll be talking about that and some other types of real estate investments next week, or next month, I should say. And now we're on to the questions. I see there's some in the chat. So we had a question about additional items that you can add in the standard lease. I mentioned you could attach something which has those additional terms. You can get into things about smoking and how you can actually It's one of the few areas where left we can discriminate. You can discriminate against smokers and insist that they not smoke in the house. You can address, perhaps some parking issues. You can address use of the property. So whether they can operate a home business or only of certain types, there's all manner of things, but basically anything that is legally supportable can go in there with one proviso. You can't contradict a term that's baked into the act. So as an example, you can't force people to give you post-dated checks because that's written into the act. You can't force people to do that. They can only, you can ask for them. I get them myself with my tenant, but you can't require it.
Mhm.
Next, there's a question about private equity deals. You need to go through what's called an exempt market dealer. They are licensed and they're licensed on a per province basis. So if you want to send me an email, my email's right up there on the screen. I can refer you to someone. He's operates in Ontario and West, so none of the eastern provinces, but he can work with deals from BC to Ontario. In terms of, the question is, what are the tax or other considerations as a Canadian venturing into the US? Well, we had a whole presentation about that. I'm not going to repeat it right now because it is available on the YouTube channel, so you can read it. But essentially, you want to get your structures set up properly from the start because it gets expensive to unwind things that don't work. And it depends on what your goals are. So one of the biggest deciding factors is, are you planning on leaving whatever income is generated in the States and perhaps building up over time to buy a second property or a third property? Or are you trying to bring back all the money as soon as you earn it? Because that affects the structure in a large way. The other thing is you want to be careful as to timing, in that if you can, don't force yourself to bring back the money on a fixed schedule. It's better if you can wait and bring it back later if that's to your advantage. And that's primarily driven by exchange rates. I myself did a deal in the States. I loaned money in US dollars, was paid in US dollars, was paid interest in US dollars, and got every cent that I was owed. Unfortunately, I lost money on the deal because at that point, the Canadian dollar actually went up against the US, which meant I got paid in less, a lower value dollar than what I loaned it.
Mhm.
In terms of wholesaling, the question is, can you wholesale in the GTA in this crazy market? Actually, that is one of the very few strategies that you can do in any market, anywhere. When you look at some of the more longer term strategies, but such as buying or even fixing and, well, fixing, flipping, you can, but putting in all the additional features such as backyard sheds, etc. All that stuff you need to do in a market that's not as heated as the Toronto market. Not the least of which is you kind of need a backyard if you're going to put something in the backyard, and Toronto is a whole lot of condos. But you can certainly wholesale. You can fix and flip, but you need to know your market values. That's the number one thing, because you put a property under contract that's too expensive, you just aren't going to find a lot of takers. And what you would do in that case is you'd make sure you had an escape clause, or sometimes it's called an out clause, that if you don't, say, have your financing in place in 30 days, then you can back out of the deal and get your deposit returned. One of the easiest things to do is subject to the approval of my partner, right? You put that in your offer. Well, they have no idea who your partner is. right? Your partner, in fact, could be the person that you're trying to find to buy it from you in the wholesale. So you need to protect yourself, all that. And you need to protect yourself in that fashion. Okay, there's a question about purchase price from IT. I don't know if you're referring to my specific condo, because you're asking about price. And yes, I did get a mortgage. It was not hard to get. But the key,
That was for Diana, I believe, Michael.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just put in the chat, my house, it kills me. I bought it for 665 and one of the other of his clients bought it for like 6 months earlier, $125,000 less. So this market was ridiculously hot. It's really jumped up. I had to pay a little extra because the appraisals had not caught up, but it was still worth it. My house is fairly new. I did get a mortgage. I put 20% down. My house is fairly new. It's only 2016, so I didn't have major repairs. And to reno or theme, I say reno meaning theming those rooms. I can't really share what I paid because I had an arrangement with this man as far as like he wanted to make my house kind of a showcase for his other investors. So he went a little over, quite a bit over. So it's not like you could look at my house and say, oh, I could get that. And even still, I remember when we thought 15,000 sounded like a lot per room, but when you see what they put in there, yeah. And he says, you know, now kind of rooms that I got were close to, you know, 30,000 per room. So you could see there's quite a lot of cash you have to put in there. Did I answer all the questions?
Yeah, you actually already addressed the next one was, did you get financing or a mortgage? You mentioned you had some properties in Georgia, I believe, that you were able to refinance to free up some cash for the themed house.
Well, yeah, I had cash from other things. I also took some cash out of this house. So my primary house, there's a lot of equity here. So I decided to use it. So, you know, that could really take away from some of your returns, but being the interest rates are so incredibly low, it was money worth getting and not
Sure.
sitting on. What does that mean? If so, was it hard to get being a FN?
Foreign national.
Foreign national.
Oh, being that I'm not, yeah, like I addressed, I'm a US citizen, but we do have, Michael and I have a colleague who's just about finishing up with her house and she's Canadian. So
Now, but
it can be done.
you're
Mhm.
American, but you don't live in Florida, right?
No, I live in California.
So you're doing it from quite a distance yourself.
Yes, I did go down there twice. I went, but I bought the house sight unseen. I just went down like during the first week that we were, you know, still in the, you know, contingency. And I checked it all out. But I did a lot of research on my own and also with my realtor. I have to say he was very thorough with us in the beginning with the, and also when I showed up, he showed me all the other resorts and showed me quite a lot of stuff.
Great, great. So there's a question about the YouTube channel. I'll be sending out a link to this presentation once it's been converted and uploaded, and in there there'll be a link, but you'll be able to access all the other presentations because they're all in the same place. All right, so I think we've got them all, George. I think so. So if anyone has
I got a
any
question.
more questions, please just unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Michael, Greg Johnson.
Hi, Greg.
Hi. When it comes to the wholesaling, in other words, you're saying the pre-buying of condos or properties, a lot of well, put it this way, all the builders want it to be, have a mortgage pre-approval. Otherwise, they're not going to look at the deal in order to firm it up, if you want to call it that.
Right.
So if I'm now have a pre-approval on 4 different properties because I'm wholesaling them, and I all of a sudden have it taken over by somebody else, which is what you're doing. What release do I get from the builder when the new person takes it on? They are releasing me from the property.
Yeah, well, that's what you definitely want. As I said, I work for a home builder, so I'm pretty familiar with that part of things. You want to make sure that in the agreement you sign in the first place, that you have the ability to assign.
Yes, I understand that.
So assuming that's there, then by assigning it, and you want to assign it without recourse,
I agree.
because that means they can't come back to you if the person you've assigned it to does not fulfill their obligations.
True.
As a practical matter, you may have difficulty getting to the point where you're going to get 4 properties that are condos with approval letters.
But if you're assigning the property over, then now you're released from the property is what you want to do from the builder is that, Fred has taken over for Greg.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That
Now, the other thing is that if you're doing that, if I have to put down 15% offer money with the offer, because they're usually looking for, 15 to 20% within the first year. And now I'm going to have that taken over by somebody, hopefully within the first, 3 months. They have to come up with the down payments that I have made, plus also the cost that the builder's going to put in to assign the property, plus my profit.
yes, that's what you'd want in that case.
Yeah. So it's easier to do it when that property is first being sold as compared to later, because if you look at it right now, somebody bought the property, it could be already up $200,000. Now somebody has to give the $80,000 down payment plus the other $200,000 of profit, less, the money going to the builder through the assignment fee. That's a lot of money to be putting up front. And do you see that happening, or you're looking at them, if you want to call it flipping it relatively quickly?
A number of points on that. First of all, you're talking condos. I'm not thinking that this strategy is working all that well with condos in the GTA, at least. It's more something where you're buying houses that are already built. Pre-construction is kind of a separate animal. There's additional HST concerns,
Mhm.
and that was covered in a previous session as well. For those of you that are on that call, I should mention that after the call, and I'll put out an announcement. Thanks, Diana, for joining us. I understand you have to leave, so really appreciate you sharing your experience with us, and those photos really told the tale very well for you. So thanks again.
Mhm.
Uh,
So you're looking at I'm trying to buy pre-construction houses, which is still going to take a year or two to build.
Right, but you're taking wholesaling and saying do it with pre-construction. I never said anything about pre-construction when I talked.
Oh, okay. So you're looking at it as existing homes is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's what I was referring to. It can work with it. It just gets more complicated. As you
Yes.
say, the builders will allow you to do it, but they almost always have a fee baked in. I'd have to pull out our latest APS, but I think the fee is pretty substantial. I think it's thousands, right? Because, and the reason for that is simple. You're building in the GTA,
Oh,
you're
doesn't have
taking
to be.
all the risk. Why should you give the profit to someone that's not even going to buy the house? right? They're just going to flip it, and you took all the risk. They're taking advantage of the fact that it takes 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 years to build something. And if it's a condo, you have to get the condo corporation set up.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
So it's just a lengthier process is my point. So
Yeah.
the builder does not want to give a buyer who's not even going to own the home at the end of the day that profit. So more and more they're making it painful to assign the property. So I think
Yeah, because they understand that. They'd rather say, oh, if this person's stuck and they can't buy it, we'll take it back because now there's another
Oh.
$200,000 worth of profit in it because
we love that.
yes, I know you as a bill. I know. You may or may not understand. I'm a mortgage broker. Okay, that's why I'm asking these questions to try to give information out to the other people here. But I'm surprised that they're wholesaling on, pre-built properties.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah. And that's where it comes down to understanding value and also understanding what people are looking for. As an example, I mentioned if you're able to make a relationship work with a flipper,
Hmm.
they often don't want a property that's in good shape
Yes.
because the value they bring is they bring their labor and their skill such that they could fix up a property for $20,000 to $30,000 worth of materials and sell it for $75,000 or $100,000 more because
They're using their labor as the profit coming out of the profit.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So it's just another
Mhm.
way of looking at the deal. All that to say that different deals will appeal to different buyers and different sellers.
And the different risk levels. Yeah.
Yeah. And the return usually follows that, right? So if you want the best return possible in real estate, you buy raw land outside of major cities and wait the 10, 15, 20 years for the city to spread out to where your land is. And you have a tremendous return, but you got a long wait. Right?
That's called builders. That's
Yeah.
called builders.
Yeah. And so a lot of things can go wrong over that time frame.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other questions that you had or perhaps someone else has? Okay, it seems like that's it. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining me tonight. And again, like to thank our special guest, Diana.
Hmm.
She put her email in the chat and I will send it out when I send out the link for the recording. If you do have any questions dealing specifically with the theme rentals, she's been gracious enough to welcome those emails. She'd be happy to share her experiences with you. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you hopefully in 4 weeks for part 2, where we'll cover some additional ways of investing. Again, the whole idea is to just expose people to different ways of getting involved with real estate. And I'm sure you can find 1 or 2 that'll appeal to you. Good night, everybody.
All right. Be safe.